This might seem like a bit of a mind puzzle, but I want to ask you, is there a difference between truth and opinion, between facts and science? As you're noodling on that, I want you to think beyond the scope, maybe even of the most recent election or even the life as we know it in 2020. And I want you to zoom as far out as your imagination will allow you and ask yourself the question, is there anything in the world of leadership or humanity or relationships, is there anything that you would consider to be absolutely true? Anything at all? Anything that you would consider to be absolutely true? Welcome to Leading Leaders Podcast, 5-minute videos, 5 days a week. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And I know that question, is there anything that's absolutely true? It's a bit of a puzzle. But I want you to think of the last, 3 to 5 years, maybe back to your days in high school. You remember we used to take tests. And when taking a test, there were things that the teacher would bring up sometimes during the course of the teaching, and maybe with a stomp, there would be this is the way this is going to be. You need to make sure that you know this. It's going to be on the test. That stomp told you it's going to be on the test. And if you were smart, you took good notes exactly the way it was said because it's going to be on the test. And the value of knowing that's going to be on the test, well, that was pretty important. It also meant, though, that you should trust it to be true. I mean, if it's important enough to be taught and it's important enough to be on the test, then it's probably important enough to remember as true. The challenge is, over the last few decades, there are certain elements, human beings and technical devices, that have become, for lack of a better term, arbiters of truth. They now decide what is actually true. In fact, there's a whole new series of information coming out right now that certain tech companies have the ability to decide whether what you're saying live in your video or not is acceptable, if it's true. In fact, I just noticed the other day that while I'm doing these live videos, they're being transcribed, and the transcript is actually, the subtitles are actually on the screen while I'm doing this video live. And I noticed that during that process, there are certain videos where I say certain words, and those certain words, and I won't use them right now because I hope it won't happen to this video, but it probably will anyway. Some of those videos will have 200 or 300 views, and some of those will have 50 views. And I've always kind of suspected that if I use certain words that, the video gets targeted to be removed or to be diminished or to be hidden or to be whatever. And if it doesn't get shared by a whole lot of people in the first, 25 minutes of it being posted, then it goes off into oblivion because there's so much on the news feeds, the timelines, the channels, the YouTube broadcasts, et cetera, all the other places that I would put it, that if you don't intentionally go to my podcast on my website, the chances are within an hour or so it won't even be relevant unless someone has shared it or been tagged in it. And that's a sad reality. But I did notice that when certain words were used and they came up in the transcript, that the views would be even more diminished. Well, just recently, I heard a report that certain tech companies have actually boasted about their competence in removing 8,000 content producers from their platform. Their ability to remove 8,000 content producers from their platform because what they said wasn't deemed as true. Now, it wasn't necessarily that they've done a historical investigation and looked into the details of what they said. It was just that they didn't think it was true, or they didn't like what was being said, and therefore they were removed. And in their own words, some of those before the videos even had a chance to accumulate 100 views. Now, I mentioned yesterday that I had a video that was live streamed, and while it was live streamed, there were 345 viewers. I have a screenshot of it to see how many views that video had. When you go back to the same video right now, it says no views. It doesn't say 0, 1, 2, or 5. It says no views. The two words are there, no views. As if to say, this one's not allowed to get views, which is really ironic because it's just talking about marriage. But the reality that we live in a world, and I believe Elijah Schaffer said it well, he said, when you understand that there are certain people that you're not allowed to talk about, certain things you're not allowed to say, that those are the people who are controlling truth. Now, I have to say, as a person of faith, I do hold to the idea that there is absolute truth. And that because it's absolute truth, and it was established long before humanity existed, long before the world existed, that absolute truth may be understood by us, but cannot be changed by us. That our obligation as human beings is simply to come to know that truth the best way that we can, to understand it the best way that we can, to surrender ourselves to the fact that it is the truth, whether we like it or not, and then to operate our lives according to that absolute truth. Now, you may have a different religious belief than me. You may have a different political belief than me. You may have a different world governance or financial systems belief than me, and that's fine. But neither of us, regardless of those other systems that we uphold, would argue that gravity is a real thing. Now, science may debate just a little bit on whether or not gravity in a vacuum operates at a speed of, say, 29 feet per second versus 32 feet per second, because it depends on the gravity. Not necessarily the weight of the thing, but gravity in a vacuum versus not in a vacuum. But it also is impacted by things like aerodynamics, total mass, and the barometric pressure of the day. But gravity is undeniable. The application of gravity might change. The ability to defy gravity does exist, but gravity is undeniable. Gravity is a fact. It's a truth. And it supersedes everything that you think about it. I want you to think about the things in your life that you found to be absolute. You may not be able to put your finger on them right now, but it's absolutely important that you find the things in your life that are absolute. As leaders, one of our biggest challenges is to be arbiters of truth. One of the things that we have to be held responsible for is justice. As leaders, we're responsible for seeing that justice is done within the realm that we have control or influence over. And if we can't find absolute truth, then it's not possible to treat everyone fairly or even with justice, because we will treat people based on our interpretation of them or our understanding of them or our expectations of them. And all of those things are relevant. But without absolute truth, they're all ambiguous. I know this is a deep subject today. I really hope that it's been enlightening for you and challenging for you at the same time, because we have heard our world leaders parse the difference between science and facts, between opinions and ideologies. We've heard them say, well, we follow this and not that. We've heard it. We know that based on those statements, there are no absolutes. What is true for them is what best suits them and their success today, in this moment, in this season. As leaders, we should be held to a higher standard than that. We've got to figure out what truth is absolute and base our life and our core values and our directions and our leadership on that. So ask yourself today, what have you discovered in your journey as a human being, in your journey in leadership? What is unchangeable truth? What is so true today that has been true for the last 5 minutes, 5 years, 5 decades of your life that you could look at and say, that's the one thing, no matter who was in charge, no matter what was going on in the world, that's the one thing that has not changed. And then get yourself close to that truth. Because I'm telling you, my friends, right now this world is like a merry-go-round gone mad. And if you remember when you were a kid and you would sit on the edge of the merry-go-round, the faster it went, the harder it was to hold on. But the more you moved to the center of the merry-go-round, the easier it was to hold on. In fact, I remember intentionally laying in the center of the merry-go-round, staring up at the trees while the world spun around me, and I could lay completely relaxed in the center. Because in the center, the centrifugal force doesn't pull you off course. In the center, you can hold your bearing. Truth is very much like that. You've got to get to the center so that you can hold on even when the world is spinning out of control. And right now, my friends, the world is spinning out of control. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.